Hello and welcome to the Future of Banking, brought to you by ConnX, with us, financialexpress.com, specifically the BFSI section. We are doing this podcast series with some of India's up-and-coming tech innovators in the banking space. And today, I have with me one such person, the President and CIO of Axis Bank, Mr. Avinash Raghavendra. Avinash, welcome to this series by Financial Express.
Thank you, Roshan. Thank you for having me.
And we're calling it the future of banking. And you are one of the stars I see in the future of banking in India. As far as I see, your journey has been largely with Axis, and you've gone through every tech wave that has come through. Can you share some of your experience on the journey so far?
Yeah, certainly, Roshan. I mean, it's been a privilege, to be very honest. Banking, when I basically joined, in those days, ATM itself was a novelty. Okay, so from ATMs to implementing core banking, to implementing internet banking, and then going forward, sort of expanding into stuff like mobile, different setups, and to where we have now reached, right? Where we are sort of into open banking, things like Gen AI, etc. Right? It's been a wonderful wave, and one of the reasons why I call it as a massive privilege is around the fact that every year there is something new which is sort of coming out. The one difference though that I definitely see is that earlier the waves used to take at least 2-3 years. Okay, now there is something new which is coming out every couple of months, or even what we used to consider as old. It is sort of refactoring itself and presenting itself very, very differently. So these waves have actually sort of helped banking grow in the country, helped the entire all the technology enthusiasts in the country stay fairly busy.
Yeah.
And frankly, if you look over the last decade or so, you will essentially find that even the way the country has sort of leapfrogged forward has also it's greatly due to the technology backbone which has essentially come through the policymakers.
Exactly. UPI now is being seen as one of the forefronts in technology.
Ubiquitous, and this is one area which you just go to the Western world and everybody is talking about it.
Exactly. So I think we have to touch upon one thing which is the buzzword today, which is AI, right? So at Axis, where do you see the use case of AI, and how much of AI are you actually using in your banking right now?
So let's go back some 7-8 years, right? AI has been there in different shapes and form for a while now. The what is today called as the classical AI started about 7-8 years ago, and the first place where banks started using it were in areas like sort of credit policy decisioning. We sort of moved forward and used it in a few of the fraud rules, algorithms, etc. as well. Okay, so from that particular perspective, it is not that AI is new to banks or banking in general as such. Even at Axis, we have been using it for the last 7-8 years. The change which has obviously happened is through this OpenAI, ChatGPT, large language models. Over the last 15 months or so, we have essentially seen a massive wave towards consumerization of AI. Okay, that is a big difference. And large language model is obviously a very different kind of an AI vis-a-vis whatever we were sort of using in the past. So the opportunities have sort of simply exploded right now. Whereas earlier it used to be very specific use cases. Now the point here is that you think about a use case and potentially there is a solution for it, which is either available or something which is likely to come over the next 6 months, 12 months. You can be sure about it that it's an area which AI will basically pick up. So from that particular perspective, I think at Axis we have been quite focused on it. About a year back, we decided to set up a competency center which is going to focus purely on Gen AI. We have tried various experiments. Okay, we have failed in some, we have succeeded in some. What we have now decided is that we want to focus more on the conversational kind of an area, because those are where we see the ability to monetize being the highest, adoption being the highest. A few other areas will sort of go, while there is work which is happening on the side, we think that we will probably take a little longer. And a lot of the stuff that we are doing on Gen AI is currently more internal. We want to sort of, have it tested, be completely confident internally first, taking the feedback of our internal employees, for which we have essentially come out again, with a chatbot kind of a thing. We had an earlier version of a chatbot, which has now been refactored into the new one, which is basically on the Gen AI framework itself. And this is now being used by close to 60,000-70,000 odd people. And we are constantly getting feedback in terms of, how do we improvise it further.
Okay.
So we see this exploding. Okay. The next big shift that we would want to sort of, undertake is, how do we sort of, move away from purely, query response kind of a Gen AI implementation to something where, task and assignments also start getting done. Okay. So, start picking up small areas, from various back offices, mid offices, and try to see whether we can take it to end-to-end automation.
Okay.
So some work which is happening over there, but right now in a little bit of a slow burn. We believe that, in the next, like I said, 3, 6, 12 months, we do believe that, technology, this is one area which is constantly evolving, right? I mean, so what is not possible today, we are fairly certain that, it should be something which should be doable in the next 12 months' time.
Right. But what about customer-facing AI? How much of that do you have in access right now?
So at the moment, we, like I said, we want to sort of be 100% sure in terms of responses, in terms of hallucinations, and in terms of the entire ethical framework part of it. Okay, these are work which is currently going on. Without essentially putting a timeline to it, we think that, we should be ready in the medium term for the same. Where we can potentially, put direct, and obviously the areas that everybody looks at is, contact centers, advisories, and stuff like that. Okay, we will probably go the same route, but we want to be very sure before we sort of expose it to the customers.
Okay, and of course, security is a big concern here, especially when you have AI, and I think cybersecurity is another thing that all banks, not just Axis, are concerned about right now. So what exactly are you doing to kind of future-proof Axis, and also in terms of security, what do you have in place right now to prevent, we've seen the news, so much of cyber fraud happening in recent days.
Yeah, so see, this is a concern area for all the banks, and obviously the entire banking industry is basically, trying its level best. At Axis Bank, we have a very focused cybersecurity team. In fact, there are multiple lines of defenses over here, right? The technology department itself is the first line of defense, and then the second line of defense is in form of the InfoSec team itself. And the entire concept of digital transaction monitoring is again a focused department which sort of works on it. From a cybersecurity standpoint, we follow the NIST framework. Okay, so the entire thing around incident response, detection, reaction to the same, etc. There's a framework which has essentially been laid out, and which we are sort of following to the T. Big areas of focus essentially has been in terms of the perimeter security. How do we ensure the fact that things like vendor governance are taken care of? We do see a lot of activity when it essentially come to attempts, be it from a DDoS standpoint or from a bot standpoint, etc. Which keeps on happening. So it's a constant thing, but we are aware of it, and we believe that we end up responding to the same fairly successfully. But it's an area where like I said, we have to constantly innovate and try to stay ahead, because there are just way too many things which is actually happening on our perimeters. Very similarly, when it comes to the transaction fraud side of it, right? They are, from a fraudster standpoint, their ability to innovate is mind-boggling. You find them sort of finding out new ways and new schemes, etc., which frankly bankers have not, been trained to think through. So again, we are sort of collaborating with various agencies in terms of trying to become much better at it. This is an area where we believe that technology in form of data analytics, preventing and ensuring real-time declines basis the signals, in terms of the fact that has there been a sudden change in terms of devices, sudden change in terms of IP addresses, or is there somebody who's got a clean cache suddenly trying to do a transaction, etc. Right? These are signals that we are now trying to sort of capture and trying to sort of respond to.
And this is something that AI can also capture?
Absolutely. Yeah. See, because of the sheer volume of data right now, okay, we are dependent on a lot of AI based algorithms in terms of sort of doing the entire sifting of the data for us.
Okay, it's interesting since you mentioned data and AI in the same context. Now, how are you kind of training your AI models? I mean, especially with banks, and there are privacy concerns also, right? With PII data being available with banks. So, how are you training your AI models?
No, see, the way to look at it is when we are training our models, we are not so focused in terms of what is the name of a customer or what is the address of a customer or the mobile number of a customer. We are looking at patterns over here. Okay, we are essentially trying to look at the fact that if there are salaried individuals, I mean, what is the propensity to spend depending on different areas. Okay, so we are interested in cohorts of data over here.
Okay.
We are not so much interested in identifying individuals over here. I mean, identifying the individual does nothing for us. Even from a fraud standpoint, right? It doesn't help us if we essentially come to know that it's an Avinash or a Roshan, who's basically trying to ping from the other side. What we are more interested in knowing is there a device which is essentially coming? Is the device giving us a clean signal? Is it having coming with any kind of a malicious footprint? Is it a device which has been sort of where the SIMs have where the SIM it could be eSIM or it could be a physical SIM has been changed over the last say 24 hours or 48 hours. So as long as we get this kind of a data, I mean, we can sort of build our models, and that is how the model building actually essentially happens.
But what about regulation in this space? It's largely unregulated right now, or regulation kind of follows innovation here. So, do you think that's a risk or an opportunity?
See, as a banker, working in a bank, and obviously the entire banking industry, I can speak on behalf of them. I mean, we will always, whatever we try to do will always be within the framework of the regulations itself.
Yeah.
We don't really look at it as an opportunity that, the regulations are still a little iffy. Purely because, I mean, we have seen the DPDP Act. Okay, internally, inside Axis Bank, I mean, already there's a project team. We are sort of, going through the entire, DPDP Act. We are actually going through the entire, process-related documentations, fairly in advanced stages in terms of the entire consent management framework, etc. So in banks you will essentially find that we are working in anticipation of the regulation which is going to come, because it's fairly apparent to us that things around data privacy, things around the fact that customers are going to be very, very sensitive to these things, besides the regulators themselves, is something that we need to be very cautious about. And at the end of the day, the 1 lakh people working in Axis Bank are also, citizens of the country. We are also quite conscious about the fact that, what is our essentially data being put to use for? We are also, account holders in Axis as such.
What are you kind of doing to kind of stay agile in this whole thing? Because sometimes a lot of these regulations kind of hold you down. Do you think that's something that's there with Axis?
So, it's like this, right? I mean, a game of cricket, I mean, there are these rules. And we know that, I mean, if we have decided to choose this game, I mean, obviously we are going to be play within the formats of the game itself. So, I don't think anybody is complaining on this. We have learnt it the hard way. Maybe what I find is that, this kind of a comment typically comes, from the Fintech industry much more. Potentially because their legacy is just about starting at this particular point of time. Banks have been at this for several years. I mean, there have been regulations always, and we have realized it, and grown wiser over the years to sort of now appreciate the fact that without this particular regulations, I mean, things can go awfully wrong.
Yeah.
So all the bankers you will find have come to respect it and sort of work within the framework. And even start contributing to sort of making it tighter if the need arises.
Again, when it comes to innovation, I think fintechs probably may be a little ahead of the curve. I may be wrong here with banks.
I would sort of have a good conversation around that.
Exactly. So that's why I want to get you into that conversation. Are you like collaborating with fintechs? How are you looking at innovation in this space?
Yes, we do believe that there are several opportunities to partner with fintechs. Clearly, their way of thinking about customer engagement, their way of thinking about data, the some of the things that they look at it very differently, even from a technology implementation standpoint. Now, these are areas that we do believe that they definitely there are areas where we can sort of learn from them.
Yeah.
And the best way to learn is obviously to sort of partner. But there are areas in which we believe that we are fairly strong. Obviously we are a 30-year-old bank, so there is this wealth of data that we essentially have. We believe that we understand the entire risk and credit scoring, etc. Much better than them.
Right.
We do believe that we can sort of appreciate the rule of the land much better from them. And we have the width, and I think most banks are also nowadays part technology companies to sort of give them the scale that most of them sort of aspire towards.
Okay. So when it comes to scale, then you're saying that you would probably have a wider reach than some of the fintechs, or since many of them are.
It can be a mix. Okay, we partner with certain fintechs who work with us for reach, and then obviously we work with a lot of the e-com firms as well. Potentially because we as banks also want to offer our products to wherever our customers are interested in going.
Right. So now coming back to the data that you have in your bank, we have seen a lot of breaches happen in the last few years. Whether it's maybe not with your particular bank, but with many banks, we have seen customer data getting leaked and all that. Specifically, how does one go about mitigating that, and how do you stay a step ahead of, say, people who are trying to hack into the system?
More than hacking, in most of these cases, what we have essentially seen, or even from the industry conversations that we have had, is these tend to happen when data gets sort of shared with say partner vendors with whom you are sort of working, and then there are lax control in a lot of these places. So from a sophisticated hack perspective, every organization is sort of putting in perimeter securities. We are trying to do a whole bunch of things around encryption of data, such that the data, even if it leaks, it is not something which is renderable fairly easy. What we are now started doing is also insisting on the fact that there is a certain we expect reciprocity in terms of the data diligence, in terms of how the data residency is going to be maintained by even our partners. So we want to sort of ensure that very similar standards are being maintained by the partners as well. So at the bank also, there is, both in the infosec function as well as in the internal audit functions, there are on a yearly basis, there are audits, site visits, etc., which gets done to ensure the fact that the partners are also taking the same due care of the data which is present with them. And in case the relationship is even stickier, then even prior to onboarding and more frequently than on a yearly basis, is something that we keep doing.
Since we're talking about the future of banking here, two buzzwords that come to mind. One, of course, we've spoken about already, which is AI. The other is sustainability, right? With the amount of data centers, all of that happening, there's a lot of energy consumption happening. So if I was to ask you about sustainability and sustainable initiatives that Axis is taking, can you just outline that for me?
So Axis incidentally has a board committee, which focuses on ESG. Speaking from a technology standpoint, we on the data center side, from a colo perspective, we are sort of working with somebody who's on a green power kind of a setup, and in our data centers also, the entire thing around precision cooling, chiller cooling, etc., is there in place in terms of reducing the entire power consumption. This is something that we keep taking stock of, and we are obviously committed in terms of bringing down the carbon footprint in this particular area. Have we taken a specific target? Not at this particular point of time, but as we expand, and banks, given the fact that volume of transactions are expanding, the entire data footprint itself is expanding over here. As we expand, as we work with more partners, even in terms of data center providers. I mean, this has now become one of the top 3 criteria in terms of our choices that we end up making.
Okay. If I was to ask you, what is the next big innovation that you see happening in the banking space, or are you already working on something that you could probably give me a sneak peek on?
So we spoke about Gen AI. Okay, that is going to explode big time. Okay, the what I do think is Gen AI and quantum computing is to a certain extent going to sort of come together. So the kind of sophisticated algorithms, the kind of sophisticated and when it comes to quantum, we will essentially see that not only is it going to be put to sort of commercial use, but also from an area of security. Okay, I mean, we've got to appreciate the fact that most of the passwords that are there are something which in a quantum computer can actually get hacked in, or rather can get discovered in a matter of seconds. Okay, so quantum is going to sort of introduce new ciphers. Quantum is going to sort of introduce far finer insights into transactions than what we have seen in the past. We have done some proof of concepts. Okay, a few of them in the security space, which we believe is fairly exciting. So, like I said, I mean, one area is Gen AI, which everybody for that particular matter is putting big bets on. And the other area which I think is going to converge at some point of time is going to be on the quantum side.
That's interesting. So, I mean, in your banking career, you've seen technology evolve from, like you said, internet banking, which is just a website at that point of time, to mobile banking, to using apps and QR code and UPI and all of that, where we are today. If someone was getting into the banking space right now, a young banker, what would be your advice to them? What are they going to be?
See, the most important thing in banking for a youngster to succeed is they have to be very there has to be an acceptance around change. Okay, things are changing very rapidly. 5 years ago, some of the stuff that you and I are currently talking about, Roshan, I mean, we were not talking about that. So there has to be this acceptance of change. The second part is, especially those who want to join technology, I keep sort of repeating it, is around the fact that, we have to, try to keep things as simple as possible. It is very easy to get enamored by the new shiny toy. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, if you have homogeneity in terms of the technology choices, and if you have the skill sets around it, I mean, it may not be the best technology, but you will be able to put it to best use. Okay, there's a very important distinction in this. I mean, you've got the best technology, but you do not have the skills to use it, or you are working maybe instead of a 10 with something which is at a scale of 8, but you have the right skill sets, the right talent to sort of make things happen. It will work. People, at the end of the day, banking is all around, customer centricity and collaboration. I think as long as these 3 or 4 things are basically kept in mind, there is absolutely no reason why we can't have more and more wonderful bankers sort of joining the fraternity.
Okay, so on that note, Avinash, thank you so much for being part of this podcast, and we'll have many more such wonderful future bankers and who will be part of the future of banking joining us on this podcast series. Stay tuned to financialexpress.com for more such podcasts. Thanks so much.